Ever felt like nobody notices you? Leo, the little kitten, felt exactly that, and he was done with it. So, he tore up the house, shattered every rule, and left a mess his family could never ignore. But by the end of the night, there was one thing he didn't see coming. Leo was used to getting his family's attention, but today was different. They rushed out the door without a second glance, barely noticing him sitting by the window, waiting for his usual morning pets and treats. As the hours passed, Leo began to feel a mix of sadness and anger. How could they just leave him here, all alone? For a little kitten who was used to constant love and cuddles, this was unbearable. He didn't know what he'd done to deserve it, but he knew one thing for sure. He was tired of being ignored. And if they weren't going to see him, then he was going to make sure he couldn't be missed. So, Leo hatched a plan to turn his family's world upside down. Literally. As the hours passed, Leo's patience faded. He was used to being the center of attention, his family doting on him, giving him treats and cuddles, and making him feel like he was part of every moment. But today, they rushed out the door without even a goodbye. Leo sat there, staring at the empty house, feeling that uncomfortable sting of being forgotten. He tried to stay busy, batting at a crumpled piece of paper, climbing up to the window to watch the birds, and even napping, but nothing could distract him from how lonely he felt. At first, Leo just felt sad. His little heart ached as he wandered through the silent rooms, hoping his family would come back soon. But as the day dragged on, that sadness slowly started to transform. It turned into frustration, then into an idea that made his whiskers twitch with excitement. If they're going to leave me here alone, I'll make sure they remember me when they come back. He glanced around the living room, his mind racing with possibilities. Leo didn't just want their attention, he wanted them to realize just how much he mattered. The first thing that caught his eye was the big vase on the coffee table. It was one of those things he was never allowed to touch, and the thought of breaking that rule gave him a thrill. He patted over, looked up at the vase with a mischievous glint in his eye, and with one swift swipe of his paw, sent it crashing to the floor. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the house, making him feel powerful, and for the first time all day, Leo felt a little less small. But he was just getting started. With renewed energy, he turned his attention to the couch. His family was always so careful about keeping the cushions neat, but today, Leo had his own plans. He jumped onto the couch, dug his claws in, and started shredding the fabric. Bits of fluff flew everywhere, landing on the floor, covering the furniture. By the time he was done, the couch looked like a tornado had hit it. But Leo didn't stop there. The curtains caught his eye next. They were long and perfect, always drawn neatly to frame the windows. Leo leapt up, grabbed onto the fabric, and climbed, scratching all the way up. By the time he let go, the once perfect curtains were full of little claw marks, hanging at odd angles. Satisfied with his work in the living room, Leo trotted over to the kitchen, where a bowl of bright fruit sat on the counter. With a graceful leap, he landed on the countertop and began batting the fruit off one by one. Apples, oranges, and bananas went tumbling to the floor. The colorful chaos only fueled him more, and as a final act, he tore open his favorite bag of treats, scattering them all over. He munched on a few, savoring the sweet taste of rebellion. Leo looked around at the mess he'd made, feeling a strange satisfaction. He didn't know how his family would react, but one thing was certain, they wouldn't be able to ignore him now. Leo sat back, surveying the mess he'd made in the living room. A few hours ago, he had been a forgotten kitten, left all alone. But now, every bit of his frustration was visible in the chaos around him. The once pristine room was scattered with torn cushions, broken decor, and his little paw prints. A grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. Finally, he thought, they're going to know exactly how I feel. The sound of his family's laughter used to fill this house, but today it was painfully silent. With every minute he spent alone, he felt less like part of the family, and that hurt. Leo knew he had to make them understand what it felt like to be ignored, so he moved into the dining room to continue his mission. In the dining room, the table was set with everything arranged perfectly, just as his family liked it. Leo jumped onto the table, eyeing the stacks of plates, the placemats, and the napkins. With one quick swipe, he knocked over a stack of plates, sending them crashing onto the floor. The clatter made his heart race with excitement. He was leaving his mark on every corner of the house, and he wasn't about to stop now. Then, he spotted the centerpiece, a tall glass bowl filled with colorful stones. This was something his family always kept away from him, guarding it like it was something precious. Leo nudged the bowl with his paw, tipping it until it was just about to fall, then gave it a final push. It hit the ground with a satisfying crash, the stones scattering across the floor in every direction. The bright colors of the stones felt almost like confetti, a celebration of his newfound freedom. But as the dining room chaos settled, Leo felt a flicker of doubt. Would his family even care about this mess? He pushed the thought aside and padded into the hallway, where their shoes were always lined up neatly by the door. Leo batted at each pair, sending them skidding across the floor. Some ended up in the living room, others in the kitchen, and one even halfway up the stairs. The once organized hallway now looked like a tornado had ripped through it. With a gleeful bounce in his step, he moved on to his sister Bella's room. Bella was always so neat, always arranging her things just so. It made him feel like she cared more about her stuff than she did about him. Well, we'll see how she likes it when everything's out of place. Leo climbed onto her bed, ruffling the carefully arranged blankets and pillows. Then he spotted her collection of stuffed animals, lined up perfectly on her shelf. One by one, he knocked them onto the floor, leaving a trail of plush chaos. But as Leo looked at the mess he'd made, he felt a little pang. Bella was his sister, after all. He loved her, and he knew she loved him. He shook off the feeling, though, reminding himself that he was making a point. They had to understand how lonely he felt. As he left Bella's room, he noticed the door to his parents' bedroom was slightly ajar. Normally, he was never allowed in there, but today was different. He nudged the door open and crept inside, his eyes scanning the room for anything he could get his paws on. The bed was perfectly made, the pillows fluffed, everything just the way his parents liked it. Leo climbed onto the bed, his paws sinking into the soft blankets. He kneaded the comforter with his claws, leaving little pulls in the fabric, then rolled around, messing up the smooth, tidy surface. Then, his eye caught something shiny on the bedside table, his mom's favorite vase, with fresh flowers standing tall. He'd seen her smile every time she looked at it, and she always told him, "Leo, this is not a toy." But right now, Leo wasn't in the mood to listen. He gently nudged the vase, feeling a thrill as it wobbled on the edge of the table. With one final push, it toppled over, smashing on the floor in a shower of petals and broken glass. Leo looked at the mess, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and sadness. He was making a statement, sure, but part of him knew that maybe he'd gone too far. But he couldn't stop now. This was his only chance to show his family just how much they meant to him, even if he had to break a few rules to get their attention. When he was finally done, Leo sat in the middle of the mess he'd created, looking around at the chaos. Every room in the house bore signs of his rebellion, a testament to how much he missed being part of the family. But now that the house was quiet again, he couldn't help but feel a little empty. The thrill of breaking the rules had worn off, and all he felt now was the same loneliness he'd started with. As the evening approached, Leo heard the familiar sound of his family's car pulling into the driveway. His heart started racing. What would they think when they saw all this? Would they understand why he'd done it? Or would they just be mad? As the car pulled into the driveway, Leo's heart started racing. He crouched behind the couch, peeking out just enough to watch his family's reactions. The front door creaked open, and they stepped inside, instantly freezing at the sight before them. The vase was shattered, cushions torn open, and fruit scattered all over the floor. Their eyes widened as they took in the scene. For a moment, Leo felt a flash of nervousness. What if they're mad? But he couldn't back out now. Then, something surprising happened. Instead of shouting or getting angry, his mom's expression softened. She looked around, noticing the little paw prints in the dust, the scratch marks on the curtains, and the treats scattered across the kitchen floor. She knelt down and called out softly, "Leo, where are you, little guy?" Her voice wasn't filled with anger. It was full of concern and maybe even a bit of guilt. Leo took a deep breath and stepped out from behind the couch. youth, his tail low and his eyes wide, unsure of what to expect. But his mom just smiled gently, reaching out and scooping him into her arms. "We're so sorry, Leo," she whispered, stroking his fur. "We didn't mean to leave you feeling all alone." His dad and sister joined in, each of them reaching out to pet him and whisper words of comfort. Leo's little heart swelled with relief as he realized they understood. They weren't just seeing the mess he'd made. They were seeing him, their little kitten, who just wanted to feel loved and noticed. As they held him close, Leo felt all the loneliness and frustration melt away. He knew he was important to them, and he didn't need to make a mess to prove it. His family promised to spend more time with him, to make sure he always knew he was a part of their lives. And in that moment, Leo felt something he hadn't felt all day: peace. From that day on, Leo's family made sure he felt loved and included, no matter how busy they got. Leo didn't need to knock over vases or shred cushions to feel noticed. He knew deep down that he was a special part of their family. They learned that even the smallest family member deserves to feel seen and appreciated. And Leo learned he didn't have to act out to be loved. It was a messy lesson, but one they'd never forget. Love stories like this? Make sure to subscribe for more heartwarming tales. And don't miss the next adventure with Leo and friends.